Some places seem like the last place in the world you would expect to have a legend. Cities, and the places around them in particular, other than the traditional tales of alligators in the sewers and giant rats, don't tend to have stories of monsters. They're too modern, too populated. However, there is a place, located so very close to Atlantic City, that seems to collect legends like dust. The very existence of the Pine Barrens is a strange thing. Nestled in one of the most populated places in the United States, the Pine Barrens exists as a strange segment of countryside that almost seems to have been scooped up and placed there. The region is not underdeveloped for lack of attempts, of course. There were several attempts to bring civilization to the region ever since the country was first populated by settlers. Mills, roads, suburbs, schools, railroads, ironworks, and so many others have tried to carve out a legacy in the region. All of them failed, and the Barrens reclaimed them all. Today, the forest is littered with the remains of those ghost towns and the remains of the attempts. Poor soil, depleting resources, and just plain bad luck. All these things added up to a situation where no civilization could thrive. Nature, it seems, won this war, as the space has mostly been declared a national park. It is not necessarily because of the justified outcry to preserve the unique location, but it is simply because there was nothing else that could be done with the place. Yet it takes up nearly a fifth of New Jersey itself. So it is not surprising that this place that devoured every attempt at civilization did collect legends. And there are several. There are those of a white deer, of a black dog that leads the lost home, and even human spirits like that of a young woman, even now, waits for her lover to return to her. But there is one that stands above the others as the chief specter of this ghoulish menagerie. You know its name, even if you do not know the story that it came from. After all, we all know the name of the Jersey Devil. It all began with Mother Leeds. We are not sure what her first name was. Some sources claim that it was Deborah, but in the end, she's only called Mother Leeds in the story. They claim that she was the wife of a farmer who had likely been too poor to afford better land. After all, that was the only reason people took up land in the Pine Barrens, particularly to farm. The soil was too sandy to yield a good crop and too thin. Everything of any value to crops was taken up by the trees. Even after clearing out a small homestead, it seemed that the only thing growing for the Leeds was the family itself. Now, this was long before the United States was said to exist. In 1735, the story goes that the Leeds family had 12 children, each one a new mouth to feed, each one a new worry, each one a potential help, or a potential reason of starvation. Maybe this was why, on realizing that she was pregnant again with a 13th child, Mother Leeds cursed the child. "Oh, if I were to have a 13th child," the woman hissed to herself, looking out on the woods and on her husband's failing crops for that year. "That child will be a devil." Maybe she meant that it was the final straw that would break the line between them and starvation. Maybe she meant that to bear another child would be something the devil would find amusing. Regardless, someone or something heard her curses. Now, the Leeds family would have been made up of Protestants, and in the Puritans of that region, they wouldn't have considered Or maybe they just would have ignored the significance of the child being born at midnight on October 31st. They would have dismissed the concept as mere popery, as they called everything that even hinted that it might have been part of the Roman Catholic Church. And at first, the birth didn't seem so shocking. The baby was born a healthy, plump boy, despite Mother Lee's growing age. He would have grown to be a help around the farm, the midwives thought. But even then, so quickly, there was a problem. As she turned to give the child to his exhausted mother, the baby started to change. The skin darkened, and the face lengthened, and the eyes that opened were no longer the normal blue of a baby, but were the deep blood red of a monster that flashed and glowed in the night. And the moment that the boy opened his mouth, maybe to wail, or maybe for something else, a row of razor-sharp teeth glittered in the light of the fire. It's not surprising that the woman threw the child, some say to the ground, some say into the fire itself. But it was of little matter. The child, on reaching the ground, suddenly started to grow. In seconds, it was so large that its head seemed to reach the ceiling of the small hut, eyes glowing in crimson malevolence. There are multiple stories on what the creature looked like. However, the general consensus is of a monster with 2 legs and a long face, like a cross between a kangaroo and a dragon. But those red eyes never change. Now, some stories say that the monster sprang upon his family, killing his mother and several of his siblings, before taking off into the night. Others say that the creature merely glared at the woman who birthed it, before shooting up the chimney and flying out of sight into the darkness. Regardless, the legend of the Jersey Devil had been born. The stories of the creature persisted. For the most part, they were mostly just sightings, on and off, of a creature that lurked in the shadows of the Pine Barrens, stealing food, attacking livestock, and always existing as a horror that could never quite be seen. It lingered, watching the unwary traveler, letting out a terrible scream in the night. And those who saw it described something that truly could only have been a denizen of hell. This fear came to a head in the last week of January in 1909. During that time, trails of footprints were seen. They went through yards and over rooftops, surrounding areas around the Pine Barrens. There was a bizarre trail of horribly killed livestock and pets. When expert trackers brought their bloodhounds to the area, the dogs refused to go after the scent, but rather sat or lay down quivering in fear. People huddled in their houses. Schools were closed. People refused to go to work. And those who did venture out claimed to have seen the creature, like some dark patch of a nightmare, stalking through the woods, watching them with those horrific glowing eyes. They proclaimed a bounty, looked for aid anywhere they could. But even after that week, there was no sign of the creature. Even after that, when those times had passed and so many attempts to catch the thing, the monster was never found. We have the records, the fear, even posters with reward money. And to this day, people brave the barrens in hopes of finding some sign of what even caused the legends, or if there was a creature at all. It is rumored to wander the Pine Barrens to this day, attacking the unwary and terrifying even the locals. Some call it a campfire tale, but it is a more frightening one than most. After all, this creature is drawn to fires, and it seems to see human beings as no different from the animals that it has mauled. As recent as 2015, reports continue about this creature stalking cars, appearing in the road only to fly off when its proposed prey ended up being a creature of steel rather than flesh. And these sightings show no sign of ending, and we show no sign of ceasing our search. The funny thing is that the Jersey Devil has become something of a mascot for New Jersey. It is hard to be anywhere near the Pine Barrens without seeing at least one sign proudly showcasing the devil, souvenir shops, people offering to tell stories or ghost tours to go into the area. Even the sports team has called itself the New Jersey Devil. It's fun, it's cute, but the fluffy pictures and stuffed animals and the fluffy mascots can't quite keep the fear of the monster from invading the minds of the unwary. Parents still use the monster to keep their children away from the Barrens and to keep them from swimming in the blue holes that litter the Pine Barrens. These filled-in mines are natural phenomena that they claim that the devil lurks near and pulls down into the depths those who swim. They tell the stories to keep the unwary out of ghost towns. And every so often, someone claims to see the thing on the side of the road with those glowing red eyes. Of course, we have our explanations, our stories, and our reasons. Many say that the whole story was there to discredit Leeds, who, rather than being a farmer, was printing an almanac that happened to be a rival to Benjamin Franklin, which also just happened to print astrology, something that those who were his rivals called devil worship, and thus proposed a story of a monster to ruin him. Others just see the Jersey Devil as mass hysteria mixed with the misidentification of a bird or a crane. It's easy to believe these things during the day or in your living room with no monsters or fears or anything else. However, on a cold autumn night, when the wind whistles through the lonely figure of an abandoned mill or the skeleton of a chimney, and you hear something moving through the trees and see, was that a flash of red? It's hard not to want to give the devil his due.